Hello and welcome to the Unapologetic Moms Club podcast. I'm your host, Janine McKinnon, manifesting maven, lunar ritualist, nature lover, sex magic expert, and empowering sex, love, and relationship coach. If you'd like, you can think of me as your witchy bestie who calls you out on your self-deprecating cycles while encouraging you to align with your highest self. And I'm on a mission to help women return to the wisdom of their bodies and nature and to embrace their inner power. If you're a woo-woo mom craving more self-love, confidence, fulfillment, and passion in your life, you're in the right place. The Unapologetic Moms Club podcast is here to help moms like you to thrive as your most radiant and happy self. Here you can find inspiration and tools taken from my one-on-one coaching sessions and group experiences to support you in your journey. We'll cover things like societal conditioning, inner child healing, pleasure practices, manifestation techniques, approachable rituals, and all around women's empowerment. My goal is to shift your perspective and to give you actionable takeaways so you can walk away from these episodes feeling inspired to create a life that ignites your soul. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful we're able to connect in this way, and I can't wait to dig into the contents of this episode with you. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hello. Today we are talking about a topic I am very passionate about, and that is why you still have the same triggers and reactions even after doing years of self-work. So this can show itself in many different ways, but it still has that root in having done all of this work in these logical sorts of ways often. Yet, when this trigger point happens, you still have this reaction. It's not aligned with you anymore. You've worked through it, yet you're still repeating these same cycles. And it can be very frustrating, especially when it feels like you made this progress, yet you keep coming back to the same situation. This can present itself in many different ways. Perhaps there's a situation that happened in your relationship. Trust was eroded in one way or another, and you spent years working through it together. Logically, that trust has been built. You feel good about where things are, yet when certain things happen, perhaps seeing something on your partner's phone or different things being mentioned, you find yourself having this gut reaction, this immediate reaction that you don't want, and it sends you in this spiral, and it just does not feel aligned anymore. And it keeps popping up even after you've done all this work. Or perhaps it is more on the sexual side, and when your partner wants to go down on you and you want to enjoy pleasure, you want to be able to have this fun and intimacy with your partner, yet every time that particular instance goes to happen or is happening, you have these initial reaction, you clench up, you have all of these thoughts beginning to spiral in your head, and it completely takes you out of the situation. And perhaps you've worked on this, you've talked about it with your partner, you understand where some of these beliefs are coming up, you understand the different thoughts you're having in your mind and what you want to flip it to. And you've done all this work, and yet it keeps popping up every single time in different ways. And again, it's so frustrating. So these are just a couple of examples, but you can see how common it is to have logically worked through something, have done the work over years, yet this same cycle keeps repeating. And that is because of nervous system programming. So we are going to get all into this, into the nitty-gritty. But before I do, I just want to quickly remind you that I do have a 33% off sale with code LOVE for all of our unapologetic practices, as well as Nourish Through Pleasure. It is a beautiful collection for women looking to align with their unapologetic authenticity, embrace their sexuality, and step into effortless manifestation. So that is all available for you at unapologeticmotherhood.com/practice. And it is code love for 33% off. And sale ends tomorrow, I believe, at the time this is released. It ends at midnight on the 19th. So if you've been thinking about it, if your interest has been piqued in any sort of way, it is your last chance to hop on that particular sale. Okay, now back into the main topic. And so this is happening, these repeated cycles, because of our nervous system programming. So I'm going to get into a little bit of the science, nerd out a little bit. So bear with me. I have a feeling you're into this as well. So let's get into it. So our nervous system is what runs the show. We have our sympathetic side of it, which is really our fight or flight, freeze or fawn responses. There's a lot of F's, although commonly it's referred to as our fight or flight system. That's that response. That's what's coming up when we're triggered. And then there is our parasympathetic, and that is our rest and digest state. That is where more of our thinking can be turned on. Now, imprinting occurs throughout our entire life. As soon as we are born, and honestly, even beforehand, our nervous system is being imprinted when we are in the womb at just a few weeks into creation. We are beginning to take on our mother's nervous system. Then, as we are born, we are a complete sponge to everything that is going on around us. Even though we may not be able to speak and communicate, we are soaking everything in. And based on the different responses we get, this begins to imprint our nervous system. So, this can look like if we are crying out as a baby and our mothers or our caregivers are responding in a loving, nurturing way, we can have that imprint of it's okay to speak out, to cry for help, to use our voice, to say what we need, and we are met with love. We are able to calm ourselves, and this is a calming, safe thing to do. Alternatively, perhaps when we cry out, we are not met with support right away. Perhaps we're left on our own for quite a long amount of time, or perhaps we are met with anger or frustration. And so this creates its own imprint on our nervous system that can be around the lines of when we are using our voice, when we are speaking up for ourselves, it's not safe. We have this fear, that fight or flight response begins to be triggered in our system. This stress response begins to be imprinted. And so this continues for our whole life. And so any different experiences we have, especially new ones or ones that trigger a big emotional response, leaves quite the imprint in our system. For example, cycling back to that example of when a partner is going down on you, having these initial thoughts and reactions and all of these things. Perhaps it started out with hearing different things associating the yoni with disgust or shame, or different comments about smell and things like that. And so all these comments have associated your yoni with these particular things. And so you have a physical response associated with the thoughts that occur. Just like the more you think about how hungry you are, you feel the physical hunger more and more. And there's many different examples of that, but that's just one simple one for you. And so we have this physical response to hearing these different comments. And then perhaps down the line, as you are blooming in your teenage years and you are with perhaps your first love, and some sort of comment is made directly to you about the smell or the look or anything like that, and it creates this very big imprint in your system. You have this very big emotional response, perhaps shame, disgust, sadness, whatever may have come up from that situation. And so this is a hardwiring this response into our nervous system in association with these thoughts, these comments, these experiences. And so through repetition, through every time we hear these different things, every time we think about that experience and relive it in our mind, every time we have an actual lived experience, this initial response continues, it repeats, and these neural pathways strengthen. And what may have started out as a little path of hearing a particular comment is repeated so much, strengthened so much that it turns into this highway. And this is your main way of what response is going to happen when this experience happens. It becomes so automatic. We don't even think about it. And so often, when these triggers are happening, our critical thinking brain, our prefrontal cortex shuts down. As soon as our emotions start flooding, the thinking shuts right down. There's lots of really interesting brain scans showing this. And then our primal and our limbic systems are what's running the show. It is our automatic systems that are just happening. And so when we have a particular experience, say again, the going down on you, even though you may have thought your way through it, you have journaled about it, you have talked about it, you know the beliefs you have, you're wanting to shift them, no matter what you do, you still have this hardwired response. You still have these feelings when it happens. You still have these thoughts, and it just continues, and you're unable to think your way through it because that part of your brain has actually shut right off. The part that speaks your way through it, that journals your way through it, that thinks your way through it, that's no longer online. That is not running the show anymore. And so those tools aren't helpful. You still have this automatic response that needs to be dealt with. And that's why, whenever these situations happen, no matter how much work you've done, you still find these cycles continuing to repeat. And it is so frustrating. Now, you may have noticed some shifts over some repetitions. Perhaps you've gained some tools and being able to calm yourself down or bring in more mindfulness that allows that critical thinking part of your brain to stay online a little bit, but it still just doesn't cut it. You're still finding this initial response happening time and time again. And it's because that hardwiring is still there. It is so ingrained in you. And even though we may logically want to experience closeness and pleasure with your partner, you can't help but have this happen. And it can get very frustrating on both sides for the one experiencing it and thinking all of these thoughts, wondering what's wrong with you, feeling shame and frustration. And then also for your partner, having gone through this work, still being met with this reaction time and time again. And so it can breed this resentment and so many different feelings. And all of this, the more it happens, the more it occurs, imprints this in our system. And so that's why we really need work that works on a deeper level, that targets our nervous system, that targets our subconscious, so we can really figure out what's going on and create that new narrative. And so that's why, no matter how much you bring logic to the situation, these things keep happening. And so people often tend to give up, think, why am I doing this work when it's not working anyway? You may find yourself making progress to a certain stage and then cycling back to that same square one. Perhaps you've allowed yourself to open up slowly but surely, but once it hits a certain point that really hits that trigger, bam, that shutdown, that cycle, and it keeps bringing you back to your nervous system baseline. This happens with diets often. We can make a certain amount of progress, and then once we hit some sort of trigger, bam, we're back to square one again. This happens when we're making adjustments in our household and we've had conversations, we've adjusted the way we communicate with each other, we're making progress. Then some sort of bigger event happens that triggers a bigger emotional response. Bam, back to square one again. And so we can make change, make these little shifts that work wonderfully when we are fully thinking with our prefrontal cortex fully online, yet that trigger event happens, that area of our brain shuts down. We are back to the beginning, back to square one, back to our baseline because of our nervous system. And that is why doing things on a somatic level is required. Somatic comes from soma, and soma equals body. Just for those that don't know, whenever I'm talking about somatics, doing things on a somatic level, it means doing things on a body level, really being able to access that nervous system. And how I do this with clients is through altered states of consciousness. We're able to go in and rewire these pathways. So, as you are able to open yourself up more, you are able to access those other areas of the brains that aren't just that prefrontal cortex. And you're able to make those shifts. You're able to open yourself up, be more receptive, take in this information, have a lot of repetition, creating that new wiring, these new neural pathways. And through that repetition, you're able to shift and create lasting change. One that means when that emotional response happens, you have a new emotional response hardwired in you, and your situation actually plays out differently rather than going back to that square one. And so this is why I use the tools that I use. So I've got many different tools in my tool belt, but the main ones I use with clients are inner child healing, breath work, and pleasure practices. And so inner child healing, there is a whole realm of it. And to be honest, I could probably do a whole episode on it. So if you're interested, let me know, shoot me an email, send me an Instagram DM. I can definitely do that. But how I work with inner child healing is again, we thin the veils between the conscious and the unconscious. We're able to open ourselves up through these different practices and tools to go on that deep level, to go into the soma and to get up close and personal with these inner child pieces, with these pieces that were imprinted on the nervous system in childhood. And that is so often where so many of these things start, and they tend to build on over time with more and more experiences. And so, being able to use inner child heals on this deeper way, we can really access the soma, see what that imprint is, see what you heard over and over again. Understand what is going on, crack that piece open, find out what that piece really needs, and update it to a current reality. Provide it what it needs. Let it know that things are different now. We can have this different response and begin to create those new neural pathways, create these new responses. And so, through repetitions, through regular customized breath work and pleasure practices and meditation as well, we are able to repeat, 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 and really hardwire this new response into the body. And so, guided meditations and practices are great when they're very in line with exactly what your goals and your intentions are. And having customized practices like what I provide with clients, and you can definitely make them yourself as well, hits on such a deeper level to again really create those new neural pathways, create those new responses. And so breath work also allows you to access your subconscious and your nervous system in a different way through the breath, through your different oxygen levels. You are able to move these different blockages that have been stuck in your body, these different stuck states, these stuck reactions, these stuck responses, you're able to bring flow to these blockages, to allow your nervous system to open up and again to be able to imprint it with what you want. And that is such an important piece is it's not just about removing these things or getting rid of these things that are no longer aligned with us. It's about creating that shift, replacing it or updating it with something that is more aligned because these initial responses, they're created because they served us in some way to begin with. They often protected us from being hurt as a child and continued on. And they're so often protector pieces. Sometimes there's other things that come into play, but they served a purpose. They helped us, they kept us safe. And there's something really special when we can really bring understanding and acceptance to that and then update it to this new role or have something else step into more of an empowering role that supports us in these shifts. And again, this really requires repetition. Yes, you can have an incredible wow experience when it comes to using any kinds of these tools, and you can notice some big shifts from those experiences. But without that repetition, again, you go back to that baseline. If you're wanting to create a new baseline, you need repetition. It took repetition for these things to happen in the first place. It takes repetition to learn how to walk, to learn how to talk, to learn how to ride a bike, to learn how to do anything. And it takes repetition to create new neural pathways. It takes repetition to learn a new way of doing things and for it to become automatic. And so that's why your dedication, your commitment to yourself is so important to get those reps in and to be able to truly create that lasting change. And then pleasure practice as well. I believe I touched on this in a recent podcast episode, so I won't get too deep into it. But it actually opens up your body and opens up your nervous system on a whole other level with this beautiful dance and harmony between your two different sides of the coin of your nervous system. And when you are so opened up in that way, you are so receptive to new imprinting. That is actually the core way I was really personally able to build my confidence in my authenticity in using my voice to showing up as who I am because I hardwired my sense of safety and my sense of belonging in my authenticity, in who I am. And so doing these things, speaking about these things doesn't feel scary to me anymore because I now feel safe. I feel like I belong in having these conversations. And so all of these tools, this somatic approach to healing, to transformation, is what is truly required to get at the root of the issue in a holistic way. So, talk therapy and journaling, and I love journaling. Talk therapy fully has a time and a place, especially when you're really moving through some big traumatic events. But once you're through that stage and you have a good baseline, a supportive window of tolerance. I don't really want to say good because that implies that there's a bad, but say you've been able to open up your window of tolerance, you are a functioning, capable human being when different trauma responses happen, then talk therapy can only really support you so far. And that's because I find that they are treating these symptoms. These symptoms are your thoughts and your reactions. The root issue is that imprint that's causing those thoughts and those reactions. And that is why somatics is absolutely, without a doubt, needed to be able to get to that root of it, to be able to lovingly dig up that root out of the soil that it has just been in and put its roots throughout everything. And so it takes time to lovingly, gently, we definitely don't want to rip it out, And then we're going to have some other trauma responses we need to deal with. And so we lovingly dig it up. And then we begin to plant something new there. Plant something that is supportive and empowering. And again, creates that lasting change. So we want to have these pleasurable, fun, playful experiences with our partner. And so we need to rewire those reactions. So when certain touches or different things come into action, they feel fun for us rather than having shame or embarrassment or disgust. Perhaps we have anticipation, excitement, pleasure, fun, and are able to really play within those experiences to be able to open up, connect with our partner, have fun, and be able to just really blossom and explore and play together. And that is so possible when you go on that deeper level, rewiring these things so you have a different response to the situation. So, if you are someone that is struggling with these deep rooted triggers and reactions, perhaps it's coming out as you're yelling at your kids, something happens, and the words that are coming out of your mouth, in hindsight, you're like, why did I say that? Why did react in that way? But it's so automatic and it comes up and you don't like it. Or perhaps you find you are getting caught up in your head when it comes to sex over and over again. You're thinking about your body, you're thinking about your to-do list, or you're thinking about different situations that have happened with your partner or haven't happened. Maybe you're recoiling with certain touches. Maybe you're feeling shame when it comes to sexual empowerment. You like the idea of it, you want to embrace it, but you have this physical reaction that comes up when you think about it or when you try to dabble in it. Perhaps you're feeling scared when it comes to using your voice, like I touched on with my personal transformation in being able to speak about all of these things is you really need to feel safe and feel like you belong while using your voice. And perhaps you're holding yourself back, continuing to please others and to quiet yourself down because that is what you have been programmed and ingrained to do. And if you are tired of any of these things, I would absolutely love to help. I would be honored to support you in your journey. I have a very accessible option through my complimentary catalyst call. And so through that complimentary call, we chat, we get to know what's going on, what you desire, what's standing in your way, and explore your options of working through it. And look, I am here to serve you. I am here to help as much as I would love to continue to work with you through my coaching services or other options. At the root of it, I am here to create an impact, to create a ripple effect of the women I touch through this podcast, through these catalyst calls, through other avenues, in you really stepping up into your inner power and the way you're able to show up then for your family. And I just believe it creates this incredible ripple effect in raising the vibration of the collective. And it's an honor for me to do this work. So, regardless of your situation, regardless of how ready you may feel to go that next step with me, to work further with me, I would still love to connect through a complimentary catalyst call. I know there can be some different feelings that come up, or I'm doing a complimentary call feeling like you're obliged to do that next step. And so I just want to remove that obligation for you, letting you know I am here for you. If you feel called, if you feel connected through these episodes, through my emails, through whatever it may be, I would love to connect. So I will leave the link for that in the show notes. Again, that's the complimentary catalyst call. And again, before we close up, just last reminder of that 33% off sale with code LOVE for unapologetic practices. If you're really wanting to go at it your own, feel aligned with the different meditations, breathwork, and pleasure practices I have available for you, that is there for you as well. So thank you so much for being here, for chatting with me, listening to me. I am wishing you a beautiful rest of your week, and I look forward to connecting with you. Please, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can shoot me an email, Janine at unapologeticmotherhood.com, or shoot me a message on Instagram at janine.mckinnon. Until next time, take care. Thank you so much for joining us inside the Unapologetic Moms Club podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you feel called, I would so appreciate it if you shared about this episode in your stories or left us a review to help us reach more women on their unapologetic mama journey. As a thank you for your support, you'll be entered into our monthly draw for a free laser coaching session. Just tag at janine.mckinnon in your story shares, or leave the rating or review, screenshot it, and email to janine at unapologeticmotherhood.com to be entered. One lucky winner is selected every month for a focused coaching session to support you in working towards your current desires. Until next time, trust your inner wisdom and create some magic.